Trample Hunter is a deck archetype that's been around for quite a long time now. The idea behind it is you want to use Warsong Grunt in addition to a bunch of buff cards, plus always a bigger Jorgama and Reserve Spot and Cup of Muscle and Char as well, also, to make it so you get a really big buff Warsong Grunt into your hand. And by doing that, it makes you be able to lethal your opponent from hand if they have a small minions on the board or a multiple minions on the board that it's able to attack into. The idea is that you want to attack into, obviously, the taunts first, but then into the minions with the least attack, or the ones with the least health if you're going to need to go for lethal through that way. But in general, it's attack the ones with the least health, but you do need to make sure, obviously, that you're counting specifically to your board state that you're going into. The cards that you want to mulligan for in this deck is you want to mulligan for Tracking, Birdwatching, Titanforge Traps, and Naielle, with a particular focus on Naielle, because Naielle helps you search through your cards for defensive tools such as Alien Encounters and the Monkeys, or it also gets you your buff cards such as Reserve Spot, it gets you another Tracking, it gets you all your combo pieces that you need for the deck. Going into this meta, it is very strong because of the fact that Infinite Shaman is the most popular and probably the most powerful deck that's come out of the current meta. And being the way that they play a lot of Starships down, and they're all 2-1 minions, which means that when you use your Warsong Grunt trading into the 2-1 minions, you're getting a big swing going into their face as well, and they generally won't have enough armor to be able to deal with that, especially as early as turn 6 or turn 7. So going into the gameplay footage that is happening right now, I am playing against a Zerg DK. The idea that I'm doing right now, because I did get my Naielle using my Birdwatching, is that I'm looking to make sure that I am being defensive enough while also getting my combo pieces that I have available. And I do have a Master's Call in my hand as well, which means that I'll be able to access my Warsong Grunt. Because with the Warsong Grunt, obviously it means that you can get those big buffs onto your minions that you need to. I have a Catch of the Day in my hand as well, so Catch of the Day is useful because it summons a 2-1 minion for your opponent. So if you're going to need to combo it with your Warsong Grunt, you can obviously use it like that. But the issue that is obviously with this situation is I've also got the Reserve Spot in my hand, so I'm going to need to play down the Catch of the Day just to get it out of my hand, and then allow the Reserve Spot to be able to buff my Warsong Grunt. You can obviously use Reserve Spot with other minions in your hand, but the buff being targeted specifically onto your Warsong Grunt, in addition to reducing the cost, is a lot more powerful than the 50-50 chance and not reducing the cost of the minion. So right now I'm just deciding which minion to trade into with my 3-3, because at the moment I don't really have a particular preference. It possibly was trading into the 1-1 just so then they couldn't get the Infestor combo turn going. I didn't have a way to be able to trade into the 1-4, which would be useful obviously for Infestor. But they do have a spawning pool too, so it is quite likely or quite possible they could take out my Warsong Grunt this turn, especially if they have a Viper in their hand. But this also puts them as a relatively weak board state, because they probably can take out my Warsong Grunt with their minions, but with the weakened board state, it isn't too much of a major concern for me. And with this current board state, I would have had lethal on turn because I would have been able to do all the combo trades into them. So they end up just using their 1-1 and going face, and then they're going to use their Viper, which gets my Warsong Grunt out of my hand. Obviously, they know that's going to be the card because of the fact that I did use my reserve spots. And then they're just going to trade into my Warsong Grunt to make sure, obviously, it can't provide lethal towards them. And now my job now is to try and activate the next Warsong Grunt and prepare for it, because it isn't that likely that they'll have another Viper in their hand to be able to deal with me. So I end up, with this tracking and with my next coming turns, I'm really looking hard for that Warsong Grunt to be able to use. So first of all, I use my hero power, because it's obviously better using the hero power than using the other card. I grab the alien encounters just to make sure that I have some defensive tools for them. And then I'm grabbing the Birdwatching so I can get the next Warsong Grunt into my hand. And I'm going to play down my alien encounters as well, just so then I've got the minions down onto the board along with my sneaky snakes, and then next turn I'll be able to do. I won't be able to do the combo next turn because it would require 8 mana in this situation. I'll have to wait till the following turn to be able to do the combo. But judging by the board state, I could have, at that point in time, I could have used just the buff and then the Warsong Grunt to get lethal. But with them using Airlock Breach, it does make it a bit more difficult because I need to trade into the 5/5s first. So at the moment, I do need to definitely use the reserve spot that's on the field. So my game plan now is to try and get my Warsong Grunt big enough to be able to deal with the 5/5s, and obviously this turn I can't use the Warsong Grunt in addition to the 2 mana spell. So it means that I'm not going to be playing down for this board, and I'm just at the moment deciding how best to do it. And obviously I decide not to, just because of the fact that it is possible they could take it out very easily. So I just use my hero power here just to find another card. Ranger GILLY is a way that I can set up for the next part, because it doesn't matter too much if it's in my hand now. Like in the future turn, you'll notice that it is obviously not beneficial, but it ends up being fine once you see in the future of this. But it probably wasn't the correct play to grab the Ranger GILLY. It probably was better just grabbing something else. But my idea was that I was setting up for the later game just to be able to get my Warsong Grunt a bit bigger and also play around Viper a little bit more. Because with that, with the Viper, obviously it can deal massive damage to your minions. So I wanted to make sure that I had some minions in my hand to be able to deal with a potential second Viper turn, especially since I wasn't posing any sort of major threat going into that turn. So they end up just trading into my minions and getting rid of my board. They do currently have the 5/5s, which have the death rattle onto them, so that's an important card that I need to be able to deal with in a future turn, especially since if they do the AoE damage, it can quite easily clear my Ranger GILLY. So I'm looking right now probably for a Char or something along those lines. I draw into the Char, which I was thinking about, and I'm just deciding what the best way to go about it is, like if I trade first or if I deal damage first. I do the tracking just to check what card I end up getting. I could potentially use the punch card here to be able to trade into the board a little bit better. But the Barrel of Monkeys, obviously, being able to use them, it means that I can establish a bit more of a defensive wall against them, while also making it so that I can set up for a future turn. The current board that they have there, and with the Char as well, I'm also thinking about that as well, to make sure that I can use that to trade. And I'm wanting them to have the Reborn one going with the Char, because it then puts it as a 5/1, so it makes it obviously a lot weaker, and it deals with the AoE that's on the board. And I'm keeping Ranger GILLY in my hand just in case I need to be able to use it to defend for an extra turn. I end up here just opting not to use the Char because I'm still a bit concerned of them being able to clear the board really easily, and only having a 1/4 on the board could potentially be a little bit scary. In hindsight, it probably was better just using the Char there, because it would have meant that they lost their AoE clear that they had on the board there. But another thought that I had was, if I use the monkeys, I can use them to trade in then to the 5/5, and then it could be used to obviously easily deal with it. So they end up using another Airlock Breach, which is a little bit concerning, because with that second Airlock Breach, it does mean that I'm in a position that's a little bit challenging. So my idea for the next turn is I'm going to have to go for the minions in a particular order. And if I hit the Char, it means that I can do the Warsong Grunt in addition to the Jugular. If I don't hit the Char, I believe it would still have been lethal anyway. Oh no, sorry, it's 45 health. No, it wouldn't have been lethal, so it's obviously very important that I did hit the char, and it landed onto the Warsong Grunt. So I end up using the Warsong Grunt. I trade into the 5-1 first, because it's, if you're on a wall of taunts like this, you want to do the one that has the least health with the same amount of damage, and then I just trade into the 1-1 to clear the board that's there, and it obviously ends up getting lethal for it. So in terms of for that game, it more than likely wasn't a great idea grabbing the GILLY. That probably was a card that was a choice that wasn't too great. Going into this game, so I'm playing against a rogue. Quite often rogues are playing weapon rogue, so that's the Mulligan thought that I end up having involved with my choices. So I'm just keeping the Birdwatching here. Titanforge Trap is a little bit too slow, especially against weapon rogue. The cards that I'm looking for are things like Barrel of Monkeys, Naielle, Alien Encounters, once I've gotten a few Discovers as well, to be able to make it so there's a wall to be able to get then my buff onto my minions. And it also means that their minion might potentially be staying on the board for me. So I end up just deciding whether to use my coin into my Birdwatching or to just end up passing here. I end up using the coin just so I can try and search for the Naielle a lot earlier, and I do get the Naielle with the Birdwatching. It is quite a likely chance, it's 75%, and then I just grab it. If I didn't get the Naielle, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. Like, I still have a reasonable hand to be able to do with Warsong Grunt, but obviously Naielle is definitely the best card in the deck for this. I have an Alien Encounters as well now, so that's even more useful to be able to build my wall. And I'm just putting down the monkeys just obviously to defend my health total. There's no point hero powering in that situation. Next turn is more than likely going to be using the Naielle just to establish some sort of board presence, or I can use the Titanforge traps as well to be able to deal with what they've got too. And they're obviously just deciding if they're going to use their card, and that does reveal that they're using Weapon Rogue. With the fact of them playing Weapon Rogue, it does make it a little bit more challenging in terms of being able to deal lethal damage from the hand, but they do end up just trading into my taunt, which is obviously very good for me. I draw a cup of muscle. I just want to get the Naielle down onto the board just so I can establish a little bit of pressure towards them. Obviously, it being a 5/5 through Birdwatching makes it a little bit stronger to be able to deal with them. And then I just deal the damage to the face, because there's no point trading into the 3/3, because they're more than likely just going to trade anyway with the 3/3 into my 1/1, or if not, they'd use like a Fan of Knives or something, and then they'd just take out my 5/5 anyway. So by not trading, it means that I end up getting a better position on the board as well. They do play down another one of their 3/3s, which is, in general, I feel like not the best idea. Like, obviously it gets them the extra weapon swing, but it means that I have a much easier way of getting my combo going. I did in that notice that I made a misplay as well. I already had the 2-mana spell. I didn't need to grab that second one, but obviously it didn't really matter too much for this situation. I have the Alien Encounters down to 1 as well now, so that's the reason why I use the tracking there rather than using the monkeys, because obviously I need to put a taunt down onto this board, but the monkeys, being able to get the Alien Encounters down meant that I could have a much bigger board to be able to deal with the opponent. And the more taunt minions that you have, obviously, the more difficult it is for them to get through the wall. If it was monkeys, they could easily clear it using a Fan of Knives plus the 2 minions on board as well. So it's better in this situation to be able to have the Alien Counter taunts just to be able to defend a little bit better against them. They end up using their Stick Up and Heat Wave, so that ends up using most of their mana, which I'm completely fine for them doing. Because the less mana that's getting used, the better for me. The less damage and mana that's going into their weapon, the better. They do end up having a 10 damage weapon at the moment, so it is a little bit scary in terms of being able to deal with them. I do use a tracking here just because it reduces down my Alien Encounters down to 3 anyway. And right now I'm just deciding what the best way to go about it is. I can either use the Char, or I could play down the extra taunts. And because of the fact they have only 2 cards in their hand, it is generally just better playing down the taunts. Because obviously it's very unlikely they're going to be able to clear 4 taunts to be able to deal any damage to my face this turn. They do end up getting a stick up as well, which is completely fine. At the moment, I am looking for a reserve spot if I'm wanting to deal lethal using the Warsong Grunt. I do also have access to the 5 damage. I do also have access to the weapon swing as well in my hand, so I can use that to help deal some damage to them too. They use their rush minions here as well to be able to trade into my dudes, and then they use the weapon proc to go into my taunt minion, which is obviously what I'm wanting to happen here. Right now I'm just deciding what the best way to go about it is for me, because if it was next turn I'd be able to get close on lethal just through using my Warsong Grunt plus my Naielle, but because I'm still 1 turn away from that, I just need to be able to have a way that deals with the 3/3s on the board. I use the tracking here. I could have gone for the weapon swing plus the punch card as well, which is potentially a better play, but I end up doing it in this way. Like it probably was better using the punch card and then trading into those things and just getting rid of the minions from the board, but this way does work as well, just because it gets rid of the minion that's there. But in general, it would have been better just using the punch card just to be able to get rid of those minions from the board. And right now I'm just deciding if there's a likelihood of the 1/4 dying. But obviously I'd end up just trading in. Like, if they have Fan of Knives, I think there's one card of their hand as a coin at this point in time. So I'm making sure that I do have the, like, it's not very likely that they have a way to deal with that anyway. Even if they did, it would only be something like Dubious Purchase that can deal with it. They use a sap on my Naielle, which is, fine. It's not really anything to worry about for me. With 11 health, I still don't have lethal just yet. So I'm just thinking of what my best way to get all my cards played down is going to be. And the Barrel of Monkeys will essentially just win the game just because of the fact that I do have the taunts to be able to play down and for them to have to then go through the taunts. So I just do all my trades and then I use my weapon swing, and the next turn I'll be able to win with the taunt wall that's here. Because there's not really any way that the rogue would be able to get through the taunt wall. Obviously they could use 2 Tarslicks plus a Fan of Knives, but it's extremely unlikely they'd be able to get into that. They get the Fan of Knives and Dubious Purchase, but obviously it's still not going to be enough for them to be able to deal with my board that's here. And yeah, it will be game very shortly for us. They use the coin. I think they're just playing out their cards at this point in time. They use the Eviscerate on one of my Taunters. And then they use another coin, so it did show that they had the extra coins that were there. Using the Gear Shift puts them to 0 mana, so there's not really anything else that they can do, especially since they got rid of their weapon to have to then draw a card for the quick pick. So they essentially were out of cards and they just used the quick pick, and it obviously got rid of 10 damage from it. Going into the next game, I am playing against a Shaman, so Shaman is the reason why Trample Hunter is relatively strong into this meta. Because of the fact that each of their minions are 2/1s, you can use the Warsong Grunt to be able to trade quite easily into them. I do full Mulligan this hand. I don't really like keeping Warsong Grunt in the opening hand, just because you're looking, in particular, looking for your Naielle to be able to choose the cards that you end up drawing. And in addition to that, you are making sure that you're looking for the Birdwatching and things like that. They're in general better than just keeping the Warsong Grunt. If you have Reserve Spot and you have Warsong Grunt in the opening Mulligan, it is fine to keep that, I guess, but it's still in general going to be better just using your Birdwatching, using your Master's Call, those sorts of things to search for the Naielle, because it helps set you up for the future turns. They end up just using their coin and using Liftoff. Liftoff is a very powerful card that's come from this expansion, obviously, and then they get a minion onto the board through it, so the fact that it helps set them up and then it draws 2 cards is really strong. Getting the pressure on the board is really good as well. The fact that they get the armor one is a little bit challenging for me, because I want to make sure that I'm not having to deal excessive amounts of damage to them each turn. They are able to trade into my minion using the Missile Pod plus the lock-on, but obviously the goal behind Naielle is to make sure that you have the dude. Make sure that you have the tracking hero power to then be able to use your Warsong Grunt and such. Right here, you definitely don't choose Ranger GILLY. Ranger GILLY in general is just going to always be the worst card, And because my Alien Encounters is only one, I do just use the Titan Forge traps just to get it onto the board. And then I'm choosing Ice Traps just because with Ice Traps it means that you can protect against potential lift-offs or lock-ons or things like that against them, and it slows down the tempo of them. In addition, they might also then try to play around different cards, so it helps seek out different cards from their deck as well. So they play down the Cactus Cutter. They play down the Cutter, which obviously isn't going to be too much of a concern for me since my card is the Ice Trap, so it means that they won't be able to play it next turn anyway. This turn anyway. They use the pop-up book. Obviously, it gets Ice Trapped, and then it doesn't give the 2/2 the buff. They play down their SCV, so it means that they're now down to the Starship costing 1 when they eventually use it. And they just end their turn because there isn't any particular trade they'd be able to do. I end up using my hero power first here just because tracking in general is going to be the best way to go about it. I also use the Master's Call just because there are only 3 minions left in my deck now, and I'm just going to be using it just so I can then get some extra buffs onto it with my Cup of Muscle and things like that. And obviously the turn 7 I will have enough damage if they do leave their minions quite small like this. They end up playing down their Fairy Tale Forest, so it's obviously allows them to draw an extra card, but in general it's not going to really help them too much. And it means that they are not really doing too much against me to be able to deal with my win condition. They play down they end up trading to trade into one of the Alien Encounters, and then they are trying to deal with another one, but obviously since they've only got the 2 mana left, it means that there's not really too much that I need to worry about. They could potentially be launching the Starship as well, which is a thought, and that in general probably is going to be their better play, just so then they get a little bit of a threatening board to be able to deal with me. Because with the Starships, you also want to consider the fact that you need to get some tempo. So something that I've noticed a lot of players do is they'll try and build this really massive Starship, but in reality, getting it on board or getting multiple on board is usually going to be better than just having one massive Starship, especially in matches that aren't going to be going to the late game where you're going to be using your Jim Raynor into big plays. I end up getting top decking a reserve spot, which is a fantastic draw for me, and I just use my hero power here just so I can set up for next turn. It's possible that it was better just to get the Barrel of Monkeys here, but because I've got such a big board anyway of taunts, I don't really need to worry too much of them threatening any sort of major damage to me. And obviously the reserve spots means that next turn I'll be able to get lethal if they do play another minion down for me to deal with. They play down their Titan, which is fine, and then they use Roar of the Seas. This obviously then can deal with quite a lot of my board, and it means that they get some extra health back. So my idea now is I'm just going to be using reserve spot onto my tracking first just to see what I end up getting, and then I'm going to be using reserve spot onto my Warsong Grunt. It possibly in that situation was better just to use the Warsong Grunt, and I used the spell before putting the weapon down just because I didn't want the hero power to go off. Obviously, if you use I didn't want the spell burst to go off, just in case I need to use it to deal some face damage. Because with the spell burst, it does mean that you end up being immune for that turn, and I wasn't going to be trading anyway in that turn, so it was more important just to keep it as it was. So now they're deciding whether to launch the Starship. This is the reason why launching it 2 turns ago would have been better. They would have had something on the board that would have been somewhat threatening. So in general, it would have been better for them to just get it onto the boards. They have a 3/4 that can be doing something. They end up using their Starship. It does then clear one of the alien encounters that is there, and I've just got one left now that's only got one health left. So obviously it is, a little bit going to finish for it, and then the Titan ends up dealing the 20 to their own Shutter Block for some reason. It obviously was better to do it into the 3/4. I don't know why they did it into the Shutter Block, but I don't think it ended up mattering too much in terms of the damage that was needed for it. They were obviously just trying to play around the hero. Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered with the Shutter Block or not because of the amount of buffs that I had on it, but if they were doing that play, the better play would have been doing the 20 damage to the Starship. Okay, so going into this game, I'm playing against a Druid. So Druid quite often is playing the hero power Druid. And the idea behind the deck that I want to have here is that I do want to make sure that I'm obviously getting the combo here. You never want to keep Ranger GILLY, and right now I'm just deciding whether to keep my reserve spots or not. I end up getting rid of it since I don't currently have access to Naielle or Warsong Grunt. It's a very powerful card if you do have access to the cards that you need, but in general, you want to make sure that you have access to Naielle or your Warsong Grunt before even thinking of having the reserve spot. I do get a food fight here, which is not that useful in this matchup, especially since they can just put Divine Shield onto it and then use it as a card to be able to deal decent damage to you. They do end up getting a decent draw here by getting their Groovy Cat online, but me top decking Naielle is obviously really good for me as well. I play down the Naielle just because it's then allowing me to get the hero power getting ready for next turn. So I use the coin just to make sure that's the case for it. And then next turn I'll be able to use the tracking hero power. And I can decide from there what I'm going to do for the next part, but it more than likely will just be using the monkeys just so I can then get the extra taunt on the board and I'm not taking as much damage from their hero. Food fight, I'm just looking at the moment because obviously it's not that useful, just because of the fact that it would put a minion on their board that they'd then be able to buff up. Until I wouldn't use that until it's a guaranteed lethal with the fact of having the food fight that's there. I end up just using my forging card because I do have an alien encounters in my hand, and obviously using the forge card in this situation means that the alien encounters will drop its price down by 2 because I'm going to be discovering 2 secrets using it to using the discover effect. They end up just swinging face damage, which in general is going to be the best way that they'll be using the hero power Druid. And I still don't have a Warsong Grunt in my hand, so the reserve spot at the moment doesn't have any particular use. I'm just deciding in this situation whether to use the Birdwatching to get the Warsong Grunt or to use the Forge to be able to get the alien encounters. I opt for the alien encounters just because of the fact that it means that I use my curve best, but it also means that I have a little bit of defensive capability against them going into the next turn. And there's no point trading into their cat in this situation because of the fact that they're going to use their cat to trade into me. So I just deal the damage to face for them. With the taunt that's there, there's no point because they don't have any other extra effect like the cubicle or anything like that to be able to make it so they duplicate the cat. And then they just trade into my 2/5 to get rid of the other one that's on the board that's not damaged. I end up drawing the Warsong Grunt here, so obviously it doesn't mean anything for the Birdwatching now to have. And I use my reserve spot onto the Warsong Grunt, and then there's not any other play that I can do here, so I just go face with my 2 guys and then just chill. Next turn, it's quite possible that they'll have the hero, the Artanis, and if they do, it's not too much of a concern for me because I can use the Warsong Grunt to be able to take it out using my hero, using the buff on it too. The problem that does come from it is if they do get the Divine Shield onto the minions, it means that the rush effect won't activate. So you need to make sure that you're dealing the lethal damage to them without the Divine Shield that's there. And it's also then very important that you're getting like things like taunt minions or the weapon to be able to use the Warsong Grunt more effectively. Right now I'm just deciding whether to use my reserve spot first or to use my tracking or things like that. I do make it so I have the other monkey down onto the field. I use the left hand one just because it's been in my hand for a while. It doesn't particularly matter too much which one I use there, but especially since the other monkeys isn't known. They end up just trading into my 1/4, which is obviously the goal that I had behind that. I didn't want to take any more damage than what I needed to. And right now I'm just trying to buff up my guy as big as possible and establish a little bit of a wall to be dealing with them. I play down the 3 monkeys here, and then I buff up my grunt just to be able to make sure that I have a decent sized wall into them, especially since if they use charge and things like that, I can use that to my advantage. They use the hero power and just go face here. Obviously, if they do the Artanis play now, they won't have a particularly easy way to be able to deal with my taunts, and it means that I can obviously get lethal through that. they end up using the Cactus Construct, which is clearly a misplay. You would never want to do that because there's not really anything you can get that would stop the Warsong Grunt and the taunts here, and then they're more than likely just going to concede. But that's my take on Trample Hunter. If you've enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe, and bye for now.